Trump and Clinton's huge differences about how to confront terrorism fit into the overall larger, very stark choice for voters. Do they want a president who brings a blunt, shoot-from-the-hip approach, who will definitely shake things up, or do they want someone more cautious, running on her experience? And that is obviously what voters have to choose from. Aaron.
All right, Dana, thank you very much. And out front now, Donald Trump supporter Jason Osborne, Hillary Clinton supporter Basil Smikle, the executive chairman of the New York State Democratic Party, and David Gergen, former advisor to four presidents, of course, Reagan and Clinton among them. Jason, let me start with you on the shift on the Muslim ban. Just Donald Trump originally said ban Muslims. Okay, now he's trying to say countries with known links to terror. Fine, he's walking that back. The problem is that would not have prevented the bombers with Belgian and French passports from getting on airplanes and coming to the United States. That's the whole reason he originally started with a Muslim ban. Is he going to really stick with the specific countries or not? Because he seems a little bit inconsistent here in this change.
Well, you'd have to ask him personally what he's going to stick to. I mean, but all I can assume is that, what he's talking about is the visa program, that a lot of people don't quite understand that we have currently quotas on different visas coming from various countries. So if you're coming from a country that is traditionally not a threat to the United States, you're going to have more visas available to that country. So when Donald Trump is talking about this, I'm assuming that that's what the program he's talking about, and saying, you know what, we need to take a look at how the visas are given out from these countries, and we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and that there's a program in place so that when we reinstitute that program, that these folks are not a threat to the United States.
David Gergen, do you think he's going to be able to keep walking this back, though? Because, look, there is a huge inconsistency, right? Because those individuals would not be stopped. And those are visa waiver countries, Belgium, France.
I think he's likely to walk it back some more and, more importantly, become more precise. Because what's been missing so often in his statements and in his response to Turkey is that he doesn't really come to grips. He treats them more rhetorically than he does substantively. I think these kind of attacks on Turkey do play into his hands. They give him an opportunity. Voters are looking for a tougher, more muscular response. But this is a moment to be when you really can step up and be presidential, when you can have a 5-minute written out statement that really goes to the heart of the matter, and is how well are we doing against ISIS in Syria and Iraq? And there is a strong case to be made that within the president's own State Department, there are at least 50 major diplomats that we've learned recently think we're not tough enough, and there are signals that John Kerry agrees with him. So it seems to me this is the time when Donald Trump could make a more persuasive argument for why his policy choices would get us further, and instead he's going back to being the old Trump.
And but what's interesting, Basil, is to David's point, the way he's handled this has certainly by the polls played to his hand in some ways, right? After Orlando, he tweeted, "I called it," when he talked about his Muslim ban and how he thought that would have affected it, even though that young man was not an immigrant. He accused President Obama of being weak in Brussels and Orlando in very scathing terms. He said Hillary Clinton isn't capable, allowed ISIS to explode. That was just today. That stuff is not hurting him. The most recent poll, one of them that we have here, he beats Hillary Clinton by 13 points on handling terrorism.
And there are other polls that say that she would beat him handily. Look, just because Donald Trump opens his mouth doesn't mean there's anything constructive that's actually coming out of it, number one.
But are
number
you
two,
concerned it is resonating with people?
I'm concerned that he's speaking to people's fear. And, Hillary Clinton over a year ago had been talking about this very issue. She said, you have a choice between fear and resolve, and she has chosen resolve. She's talked about ways in which that we could go after ISIS. And I think ultimately what Americans want is, yes, they want a response that addresses their concern, not necessarily their fear, but their concern about security and safety, and then has a plan to move forward. I don't hear that coming from Donald Trump. I just hear more of the same. When he's talking about waterboarding and intimating that he's going to decapitate the heads of our enemies, that's not what I want to hear going forward.
Jason, are you concerned about that specifically, that he's gone back here to waterboarding when Basil says that's the old Trump, or what David said, I'm sorry, that's the old Trump? I mean, to say he wants to waterboard?
No, I think what Donald Trump is actually speaking to Basil's point. I mean, he didn't say chopping off the heads. He said that's what ISIS is talking about. But I'm not concerned about that at all. I think what we have to look at, and what my hope is that, and with the next president, that we're able to sit down with the military leaders and not broadcast what we can't do, but actually within the laws that we have here in the United States and within the international laws, do some things that actually put the fear into these folks that they won't come after us.
So, David, Hillary Clinton, what's interesting here, the difference in their responses, it's not just the tone and how they talk differently. I mean, she didn't actually physically say something after Turkey, right? She put out a statement, as Dana said, very unusual. And then she held a town hall. And in that town hall, she talked about Donald Trump, the economy, Bernie Sanders, cyberbullying, and revenge porn. Okay? Those are things she talked about. She did not talk about a terror attack in which more than 40 people lost their lives. Was that a mistake?
Yes. Listen, I understand why she wanted to put an emphasis on Silicon Valley and bringing technology into homes and really revolutionizing the way the country is run. That's all very appropriate. But she could have prefaced those remarks by saying something serious about Turkey. I mean, after all, one of her major calling card, perhaps his most important calling card for most Americans, is her time as Secretary of State. So they naturally are looking to her for what would you do? And instead, she not only responded in muted terms, but she really didn't take it on. And in some ways, you know, I do feel, Aaron, that this Turkey attack is being treated by the U.S. government as well. You know, they just keep coming and coming and coming. We've got other things we're worried about, like Brexit, and it's not at the top of the agenda. The urgency about this is not at the top of the agenda.
Well, but my fear and concern is that a lot of what Hillary Clinton has discussed, even in her foreign policy speech a couple of weeks ago, is also being overlooked. The fact that she has talked about working with our allies. Donald Trump talked about taking NATO apart, and Turkey happens to be one of our NATO allies. So if we're not working with countries like Turkey and others, and we've pulled apart NATO, how are we actually going to fight terror on a global scale when we have no cooperation with other countries? That sort of isolationist approach, I think, is what Hillary Clinton's been saying does not work.
Right, and of course, big picture, but nothing specifically about Turkey. Thanks to all three of you. And next, amid the death and destruction, Istanbul's airport actually up and running. You see there the glass from an explosion. They're fixing it as people are walking by to board their flights. Plus, the United States is stepping up security at airports across the country tonight as ISIS is promising more attacks. Are our airports safe?